Hello pretty people, my name is Anna. Welcome back to my channel. I like to talk about books, and today I want to talk about what I have read in January and what my TBR for February looks like. Starting with all the books I have read in January. All the books come down to 4. Let's start with number 1. The first book I have read in 2023 was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This book I have talked about on this channel before, so I will try to keep it short. This is about a group of theater students who study at a conservatorium that is very, very elitist. The number of students that get in is very limited, and every year the school kicks out more students that didn't make the cut. Until the final year, there's only like a handful of people who are actually going to graduate. This book deals with a murder happening around this group of theater students. One of their own doesn't make it till graduation. And that is revealed pretty much on the first few pages. And as you dive into this story about this murder going down, you kind of get pulled into this whole drama. That's the best way to put it, pun intended. You kind of lose touch with reality. You learn why this murder was deemed appropriate or even necessary by some of the characters. That's kind of nuts, right? You get to watch a love story, a queer love story unfold that you maybe did not account for in the beginning of the book, but that fits so seamlessly into the settings. If you are a fan of dark academia, if you are a fan of morally grey characters, if you are a fan of unhinged stories, you should give this a read. It was 5 stars for me. The second book I read in January was The Alchemist. This is by Paulo Coelho. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Honestly, I gave this one 3 stars, but I'm like, looking back at it, I'm not too sure if this was worth the 3 stars. This honestly was so wannabe philosophical. Let's put it this way. If you liked The Cafe at the End of the World, you are gonna like this. If you dislike The Cafe at the End of the World, stay away from this. I told my friend, I was like, this really feels like someone just picked a lot of sentences from like motivational calendars and threw them together and kind of made a story out of it. That's what this book felt like to me. Still, it was easy to get through, maybe kind of cute if you want to see it that way, but not a clear recommendation from me. The third book I have read in January was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. I was really excited for this biography, as I have only read one biography before I picked this one up. So this was my second biography that I have ever read, and actually this made me want to pick up more biographies. This was so interesting. For everyone who does maybe want to pick this up, I would recommend that you look up the trigger warnings, because this is very heavy on some topics like eating disorders, generational trauma, abusive parent-child relationships, kind of neglectful relationships. A funny story about this book, I saw someone read it in a cafe when I had just finished it, and I just went over to the woman and I was like, hey, I have just finished this book. Would you mind talking about it a bit? And we chatted for a few minutes. Sadly, I had to like catch my train, but we got a few minutes of talking, and she was like, yeah, I definitely had to take breaks in between. Like, I could only read so and so many chapters at a time because this really affected me emotionally, and I could totally see where she was coming from. I actually sped through it rather fast because I feel like Jennette McCurdy really knew how to put trauma into dry humor and sarcasm. So yeah, I got through it rather fast. I feel like I can digest darker topics rather well. This sheds light on, well, the industry around the 2000s, 2010s, what it's like to be a child actor, what it's like to be a child actor if you yourself never really wanted to be, and what the future looks like for a child actor. I thought this was super interesting and I would definitely recommend it to everyone. Just know that if you loved Sam and Cat or iCarly, this might change your opinions about the shows. I gave this 5 stars. I took a lot from it, and moving on. The last book I read in January was A Farewell to Arms. This was for Carolyn Marie Reed's and Emmy Reed's book club, A Game of Tomes. This was rather slow paced and it took me longer than I thought it might. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was rather decent, but to be honest, I didn't care too much about the characters, and I don't want to ramble on too long about this book because it has its own reading vlog. So if you're really interested in what I thought about this book, check this video out. To make it really short, this book is about an American joining the Italian army in the First World War. He falls in love with a British nurse, and it's about how the war has affected what their lives looked like. Just to mention another book that I haven't read in January because it's not finished yet, but that I have read quite a few pages in January. It's called Bermuda by Thomas Finn. I am reading this with my partner right now, and she sadly does not have too much time to read at the moment, so we're going rather slow and we're not making too much progress, but I hope that we may be able to read like the last 100 pages in February. So this is basically the first book for my February TBR. Continuing with what I do want to read in February, I have a few books in front of me here. I hope that I can get through most of them. The first one would be Once There Was a War by John Steinbeck. This is the February pick for Emmy's and Carolyn's book club, A Game of Tomes. So I am not going to tell you much about this because I have already started reading it, and I have also already started filming a reading vlog. But to just shortly give you an overview, this is about a war correspondent and his correspondency from the war front, or from the places he visited while the war was going on. It's just a collection of his correspondence letters that were published in the US. They are still censored. So yeah, keep an eye out for the upcoming reading vlog. One book I really do want to get to this month is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. And honestly, I'm a hoe for covers. And this is a cover with a book and a title that suggests a strong female main character. So I had to pick this up. I want to read this with friends. To give you a quick overview what this is about, honestly, I'm just going to read you the back. This is kind of my approach to go into books. When I pick something up, I don't want to know much about it. Like, I sometimes don't even read the blurb. Mostly I do, but like sometimes I don't even read the blurb. I rely on quotes or covers or just like a few sentences I know from someone that has read the book, but I am just going to read you the blurb. In a famine-stricken village, a seer shows 2 children their futures. For the boy, greatness. For the girl, nothingness. But China in 1345 is under harsh Mongol rule. And for peasants, greatness only appears in stories. The Zhou family is mystified as to how their son, Zhou Shongba, will achieve such success. In contrast, an early death for a mere daughter is only to be expected. Yet, when a bandit attack orphans the 2 children, it's Zhou Chongba who dies. Desperate to survive, his sister steals his identity to enter a monastery. There, disguised as a male novice, Zhou learns she can be ruthless to avoid her fate. But when her sanctuary is destroyed, Zhou is cast back into the war-torn world. To change her ending, there's only one thing she can do: claim her brother's great destiny as her own. As I predicted from the cover, a strong female main character that has to kind of fight her way through life. I'm really interested in where this is gonna go. Also, you can see a dragon on the cover, so I kind of hope for maybe some fantasy elements, but this could also just be because it takes place in China and the dragon is a very common decoration. Excited for this one. The next book I want to pick up in February is Girls of Paper and Fire. This is the first part of, I think by now it's a trilogy. I have the second book on my bookshelf already, but I think by now it's 3 books. But the first and second book were gifted to me a while ago, and they have been on my TBR for so long that I finally want to pick them up. To give you a quick bit of the blurb, each year 8 beautiful girls are chosen as paper girls to serve the king. It's the highest honor they could hope for, and the most demeaning. This year there's a 9th, and instead of paper, she's made of fire. Basically, this is about Lei, our main character. She comes from a very low place in society and is chosen as one of the paper girls. She goes to the palace and has to go through the whole training to become one of these paper girls who are basically bedside snacks for the king and have to like serve him. What happens is Lei falls in love in the castle, and it's a forbidden romance. Now, we don't get any more information about who this love interest may be, but you can be rather sure it's not gonna be the king. I'm kind of hoping for a queer love story in here and maybe some fantasy elements, because a girl that's made of fire, maybe we get to see a bit of magic. The cover kind of suggests this. And the last book I have on my February TBR is Madly Deeply, the Alan Rickman Diaries. As I said, Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died kind of made me fall in love with biographies, and this is not exactly a biography, as it is not intendedly written as a biography. We have introductions that make it kind of biographic, but in the end, this is an edited version of Alan Rickman's private diaries. It's just diary entries through the years. So we start in the year 1993 and the diaries continue up until 2014. And then we get a few more pages of his early diaries, which means a few diary entries from the 70s. I have already started with this and I am a few pages in. Sadly, it is not quite as, well, I wouldn't say it's not interesting, but it's not as readable as I hoped it would be. I mean, it's just diary entries, right? But I do think it's highly fascinating what people choose to put in their diaries. What I think is a super cool thing about this hardcover edition is that you get 2 printed pages of an original copy of his diaries, like Alan Rickman's. There's this side, and you can see he like actually doodled and like colorfully illustrated some of his page headers, and you can also see that on the other print we get, which is this one. So yeah, you could see the doodles on top there too. I am super glad though that they chose not to give us just copies of his entries, because that handwriting, I cannot read that. I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna finish this in February because it is rather thick, and as I said, it's just diary entries, and at the moment I've been just reading 2 or 3 pages before I go to bed, but it's not something that I like sit down and read 60-70 pages in one go. Madly Deeply by Alan Rickman is on the February TBR, but it's probably gonna be finished in March, maybe even April. It depends on how fast I get through this. And that's already it for today. As always, if you're still here, please leave a like and subscribe. Hit the little bell if you don't want to miss anything I'm posting. Thank you for watching and see you next time.